everybody, and welcome back to another speed drawing. I know I need to get out of the habit of doing these, but they're just so fun to do, and all of my Twitch comes up with some amazing characters for me to draw. So, for example, today we are drawing the Dread Pirate Roberts. Do you know where this comes from? I mean, I know where this comes from. It's one of my favourite old films, The Princess Bride, which had a load of fun for it when it was made, and the book's really good as well. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. It was a really interesting premise to find out that even though the original author of The Princess Bride wrote The Princess Bride as if it was like he'd translated it and he'd taken large chunks of the story out and he'd edited it to make it more tasteful to the Western audiences, that wasn't actually the case. Like, this entire thing of The Princess Bride was his and his alone, and he pretended that that's what had happened. I'm not sure if there is a sequel, because if you do read the books, there is like a short story at the end of the entire thing that kind of leads into a second book, but again, I'm not sure if that's like a follow-on or if it did actually work out. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it if you're like not into big thick books like Lord of the Rings, because to this day I have not finished reading the Lord of the Rings. I physically can't. If you're dyslexic like me, then you'll not understand where I'm coming from. I mean, some dyslexic people have managed to read the Lord of the Rings, but I can't read Lord of the Rings. I can't even read The Wheel of Time, and that was one of my best friend's favourite series of books, and she tried to get me into it, and I could not get past it. I've also tried reading Games of Thrones, and oh my god, the writing of that just pissed me off so much. Like, life is miserable enough, people. Why do we need to have more miserable stuff happening to our characters in books? Admittedly, I'm then talking about that while writing an angsty fanfiction at the moment, but here we are. I can happily or unhappily admit that I am a hypocrite, and let's actually get into the talking about this, shall we? So I've taken a moment to actually bring up the name of the book, and now you can understand why the film is not called the same thing, because the book is called The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure, the good parts version, which was originally written in 1973 by American writer William Goldman. The book, of course, combines elements of comedy, adventure, drama, romance, and a satirical version of fairy tales. It is, as I've mentioned before, presented as an abridgment of a longer work by the fictional S. Morgenstern, and Goldman's commentary asides are throughout the book, which makes it an incredibly fun read, and I do recommend if you just want to laugh at some of the like anecdotal notes that he puts in the edges. It's so funny. The book was, of course, adapted into the cult and favourite feature film of The Princess Bride in 1987, which was directed by Rob Reiner and starred Robin Wright and Carrie Yules. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so I apologise if I've butchered that. William Goldman has said, "I've gotten more responses on The Princess Bride than on everything else I've ever done put together. All kinds of strange outpouring letters, and something in The Princess Bride just affects people." When the original edition failed to sell well, the author/editor Spider Robinson convinced Goldman to let him excerpt the novel, namely the duel scene, in the anthology The Best of All Possible Worlds in 1980. Robinson does believe that this helped the novel to reach the right audience, and in 2015 a collection of essays on the novel and the film adaptations was published entitled The Princess Bride and Philosophy. As mentioned before, this novel includes several different narrative techniques or literary devices, including a fictional frame story about how Goldman came to know about and decided to adapt S. Morgenstern's The Princess Bride. In Goldman's footnotes, he describes how his father used to read The Princess Bride aloud to him, and thus the book became Goldman's favourite without him ever actually reading the text. As a father, Goldman looked forward to sharing the story with his own son, going to great lengths to locate a copy for his son's birthday, only to be crushed when his son stops reading after the first chapter. When Goldman revisits the book himself, he discovers that what he believed was a straightforward adventure novel was in fact a bitter satire of politics in Morgenstern's native Florin, and that his father had been skipping all the political commentary and leaving in only the good parts. This moves Goldman to abridge the book to a version resembling the one his father had read to him, while adding notes to summarise material he has removed. Morgenstern and the original version are fictitious and used as a literary device to comment on the nature of adaptation and to draw a contrast between the love and adventure of the main story and the mundane aspects of everyday life. The nations of Gilda and Florin are likewise pure fiction. Each section or chapter takes place in a certain setting or place, obviously. It's an episodic structure with each episode taking place in a specific part of the Kingdom of Florin, the Cliffs of Insanity, the Fire Swamp, or the Forest of Thieves. The narrator of The Princess Bride, while named William Goldman, is persona or author surrogate that mixes fictional elements with some biographical details that match the author's life. Goldman's personal life, as described in the introduction and commentary in the novel, is fictional. In The Princess Bride, Goldman claimed to have one son with his wife Helen, a psychiatrist. In reality, Goldman married Aline Jones, a photographer, in 1961. They had 2 daughters named Jenny and Susanna, and then they divorced in 1991. Goldman's commentary contains references to his real-life Hollywood career, including the observation that the famous cliff scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was likely inspired by the Cliffs of Insanity from The Princess Bride. While Goldman did write the screenplay for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, it is unclear if all of the career references have a basis in truth. The commentary is extensive, continuing through the text until the end. The book's actual roots are in stories Goldman told to his daughters, aged 7 and 4 at the time, one of whom had requested a story about princesses and the other about brides. Goldman describes the earliest characters named from the kids' saga as silly names, Buttercup, Humperdinck. The novel is often considered a parody of adventure stories, but Goldman never intended to write it that way. He simply wanted to write a fun fairy tale for his daughters, with the themes of romance, escape, and revenge also playing into the idea that the book could be a parody. The countries are both named after coins. The florin was originally an Italian gold coin and minted in Florence. The later, the name of various currencies and denominations. The guilder was originally a Dutch gold coin and later the name of various currencies used mainly in the Netherlands and its territories. The 2 names are actually interchangeable. Goldman said he wrote the first chapter about Buttercup, which ran for about 20 pages. Then he wrote the second chapter, The Groom, about the man she was going to marry. Goldman only managed to write 4 pages before running dry. Then he got the idea to write an abridged novel. Goldman said he was particularly moved while writing the scene in which Westerly dies. So, as you can see, The Princess Bride is actually very, very different than most people would think. I highly recommend that you read the book. I want to say thank you everybody so much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed the video. As always, take care everybody, have fun, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.